I've been thinking about dangerous questions. I mean, largely driven by these this series of exchanges over the last week or so around genetics and sexual violence and so on. And for me at least, I think a lot of this stuff hinges on, or at least is heavily inflected by the idea of the dangerous question. I'm taking that term from this really great book. Actually, it came out in about 2006. It came out from the Edge organisation. Edge is I'm not quite sure what its status is really, but it calls itself what does it call itself? Something like an institution or an organisation for the third culture. But you'll find it online. Edge. It's great. And every year they bring a book out based on a question of the year, which they pose to several hundred or several dozen public intellectuals, scientists, statesmen, people in those kinds of fields. And in 2006, the question was, "What is your dangerous question?" And what they mean by that is a question which isn't answered, and which, in some cases, couldn't be answered because it's the kind of question which doesn't lend itself to proper scientific inquiry. But it's a question which, just the sound of the question itself, feels dangerous. And people respond. And in that particular one, there was all kinds of different questions. Like there was religious questions. What if it was proved conclusively that there was no soul? Which for many of us isn't a dangerous question, but for a lot of people clearly is. What if it was proved that God didn't exist? Again, that's not a question I regard as dangerous, but some people respond very aggressively to that question. What else were there? There were some questions to do with racial differences. I can't remember what they exactly were, but there were questions around that. What if it was demonstrated conclusively that there were racial differences in the world? It's a question which feels uncomfortable even to ask, and that's kind of the point, really. These are questions which are uncomfortable even to ask, regardless of the validity of any kind of answer that might come out of that, and regardless even of the possibility of answering them. What is a dangerous question? And I think in some ways this series of videos and exchanges that's been taking place recently over sexual aggression and sexual violence is, and not necessarily violence, but just coercive sexual behaviours, is one of those, or has triggered a series of those. And people are responding the way people respond to dangerous questions, which is basically as if you were in the presence of something dangerous, with all of the defence mechanisms and the aggressive, counter-aggressive mechanisms that implies, really. So I've just been trying to think of what would the question, what kind of a question would it be if you had to distill this series of discussions into a single question? What would it be, and what kind of, would it feel dangerous to have it posed in a completely coherent form, question, and what kind of responses would people make to that danger, and have we seen any of those responses specifically? And for me it would be something like, is there, let me have a think about this, I should have written this down, shouldn't I? Does the evolutionary history of primates suggest that modern human males have a predisposition to rape? That would be the kind of question. It's a question. Yeah. Does the evolutionary history of primates give modern human males a predisposition to rape? Now that's a really uncomfortable question. It feels very uncomfortable just to ask it, actually, just to frame it. But I think it does qualify, for myself, it does seem to qualify as one of those dangerous questions that Edge talks about. And in a sense, it's regardless of whether it's, as I say, whether it can be answered satisfactorily, or what kind of answer would come out of that. The answers are irrelevant to its dangerous feeling, really. If it gets you where you live. I mean, the best response to all that stuff, I thought, was Coughlin's response, where he was talking about, what it feels like to be in the presence of that question. He was talking about being rational. It's fascinating, I think, really. Yeah, I suppose some of the responses that you get in the face of anything dangerous, like a real danger, like a lion attacking you or something like that. I'm just wondering if there's any correlation between the kind of responses that we have to physical dangers and dangerous questions. I suppose we do, really. I mean, certainly defensiveness and also a kind of hardening of a position, I think. You know, when we're in real physical danger, we kind of strengthen our position, quite literally. You know, we either strengthen our muscles, or we strengthen our literally, you know, fortress walls around ourselves, or we band together in small clumps and raise our fists and kind of fortify ourselves in that way, and as I say, solidify and consolidate our position against the attacks that this danger seems to present. And I think I've seen some of that in some of the responses. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm kind of seeing some people adopt stronger positions perhaps than they have held in the past, or I don't know, maybe I'm mistaken, but that's the impression I've given. I also see inconsistency, and I think inconsistency is part of that, because when you're in danger, you know, you don't really need to have a consistent line. All you've got to do is do something pragmatic. I mean, that's the key thing when you're in danger. You know, you don't have to worry about whether you're being, you know, whether your actions today match the actions tomorrow and match the actions of yesterday. You just have to defend yourself. And I've seen a lot of inconsistent behaviour. I mean, the most common inconsistency I've seen is individuals who would refute the possibility that's implied in that question, that modern human males have a predisposition to rape, would refute that, and then make a statement almost immediately afterwards that men do have a genetically acquired, apparently, predisposition to seduce. You know, it's like in a sense, this fantastic video by Ujima Flipper kind of presented that in comedy form. You know, the guy who's the rapist gets slapped down, and the guy who brings the chocolates and the flowers is sexually rewarded. It's that. I mean, I know that wasn't what he was getting at, but that's the kind of logic which is. I hope the flaw in that is pretty obvious. Really, you can't simultaneously refute an evolutionary account on the one hand, and then present one that you feel a bit more comfortable about on the other. You have to do it across the board, really. So I think that kind of inconsistency is also symptomatic of people's actions in the face of a perceived danger, even if that danger is only a dangerous question. Yeah, there's probably other reactions as well I can't think about right now. Of course, anger. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of anger, which people have in the face of a question. And of course, people have gone to the stake about this stuff in the past, and other things. I mean, Giordano Bruno and all those guys went to the stake because their questions were considered dangerous. And in a sense, it's irrelevant whether their answers were right. You know, when they were posing those questions, you know, there was no. It could have been refuted. It wasn't, but it could have been. You know, the world might not have been operating the way they suggested, but they didn't go to the stake because they were right. They went to the stake because they were dangerous. And in more modern times, someone like oh dear, what's he called? That psychologist who talked about orgone accumulators. Wilhelm Reich. I mean, Wilhelm Reich ideas were wrong, it seems. I think they were wrong, but the jury was out when he was writing, and yet his books were burnt in the States, you know, which is the land of the free and the home of the brave. So, not because he was wrong, but because his ideas were dangerous. And, you know, and that Rupert Sheldrake stuff, which I don't have a great deal of time for, but that Rupert Sheldrake stuff a few years ago when he was talking about morphogenic fields and all that kind of stuff. I think it was in Scientific American, a New Scientist, that one of the editors there described that book, New Science of Life, I think it was, as the best candidate for burning he's come across for a long time. Not because the ideas were wrong, which they probably were, but because the ideas felt dangerous. They seemed to jeopardise some key paradigms in science in that case. And when your paradigms are jeopardised, you react with anger, or with those defensive strategies that I mentioned before. Yeah, so just dangerous questions, really. I'm not... yeah, fascinating. Thank you.